The first red ribbon had my full name on it. Not my initials. Not a trail number that happened to match my birthday. It said Evan Mercer in black block letters, and it was tied at eye level to a white bark pine almost 9 miles into the Sawtooth Wilderness. I was 31 then, and working for a water district contractor outside Boise. My job had me walking creek beds, checking gauges, and marking sites with flagging tape, so seeing a strip of survey ribbon in the woods was normal. Seeing my name on one was not. This happened on a Tuesday in the middle of September. I had taken 2 vacation days to hike a loop west of Sawtooth Lake, where the summer crowds thin out after Labor Day. I knew the route well enough to carry a paper map as backup, but not so well that I could walk it in the dark. The plan was simple: 12 miles the first day, camp near a chain of shallow lakes, then cut south the next morning and be back at my truck before dinner. The weather was almost too good. Clear sky, no wind. That dry Idaho cold that keeps the mosquitoes down and makes every distant ridge look close enough to touch. I passed one couple in the first hour and a trail runner near the lake. After that I had the place to myself. Around 3 in the afternoon, the official trail crossed a wide slope of broken granite. The tread disappeared between boulders, and you navigated by looking for small stacks of stone on the far side. I was halfway across when I found the ribbon. Under my name, someone had written an arrow pointing left. The marked route went right. I stood there longer than I want to admit. 2 guys I worked with knew where I was going, and practical jokes were not beneath either of them. But neither guy had the fitness to hike 9 miles into the backcountry, plan a ribbon, and get out without passing me. Besides, they called me Mercer at work. No one wrote out Evan Mercer like that except a doctor or someone filling out paperwork. I took a picture, untied the ribbon, and put it in my hip belt pocket. Then I followed the cairns to the right. About 10 minutes later, I found another ribbon. This one was tied to a dead branch wedged between 2 rocks. It had only one word on it: wrong. That was when the empty landscape stopped feeling empty. I turned slowly and looked back across the granite. The whole slope was exposed. Gray rock, scattered pines, and a long drop into a basin bright with afternoon sun. If someone had been following me, I should have seen them. There was nowhere close to hide. I called out anyway. My voice hit the ridge and came back smaller. No one answered. I checked my phone. No service. My satellite messenger was clipped to my shoulder strap, but this did not feel like an emergency yet. It felt like a stupid joke I did not understand. I sent my sister a routine check-in, so there would be a timestamp, and kept moving. The next half mile climbed into thicker timber. I began looking at every trunk before I passed it. That made the 3rd ribbon impossible to miss. It was tied across the trail like a finish line tape. The writing said 4:17 p.m. You took too long. I checked my watch. It was 4:16. While I was staring at the numbers, the minute changed. I did not take a picture that time. I tore the ribbon down so hard the knot snapped and started back the way I had come. The reasonable explanation was that someone knew me, knew my route, and had planned this in advance. The time could have been a guess. The first 2 ribbons could have been placed before I arrived. Whoever did it might be nearby, watching to see how I reacted. That explanation was frightening enough. I held on to it because the alternatives were worse. I made it back to the granite slope in less than 15 minutes. The sun was lower now, and the shadows between the boulders had deepened. I could see the far side cairn clearly. I aimed for it, moving fast, until I reached the place where I had found the first ribbon. The ribbon was back on the tree. My name was still there, but the arrow had been crossed out. Below it, in smaller letters, someone had added, "He sees you on the rock." I backed against the pine and searched the ridge above me. At first I saw nothing. Then a spark of light flashed near the skyline. Once, twice, like sunlight reflecting off glass. Binoculars. Someone was lying among the rocks about 200 yards uphill. The moment I spotted him, he stood. He was too far away for details, just a dark figure in a tan jacket. He did not wave or call out. He began descending, taking long, careful steps from boulder to boulder. I left the trail. That was the decision that nearly killed me. I cut downhill toward a line of trees, thinking I could circle around the granite and pick up the lower trail near a creek. The slope was steeper than it looked. Loose stones rolled under my boots, and twice I had to catch myself with both hands. Behind me, I heard one sharp whistle. Another whistle answered from below. There were at least 2 people. I stopped so abruptly that gravel slid past my ankles. The trees beneath me no longer looked like cover. They looked like a net being pulled closed. My map showed a narrow bench running east toward an unnamed pond. If I could reach it, I could cross a low saddle and drop into the next drainage. It would add miles and put me off trail after dark, but it would also take me away from both whistles. I angled east. For the next hour, I moved through the ugliest terrain I have ever crossed. Fallen timber lay in waist-high tangles. Young pines grew so close together their branches scraped both shoulders at once. Every few minutes I stopped and listened. Sometimes I heard rocks shifting above me. Sometimes a whistle carried through the trees. Once I heard my own name spoken in a normal conversational voice. "Evan." It came from behind and uphill. I did not answer. "Evan, hold up." The voice sounded like Mark, one of the guys from work. Same flat Idaho accent. Same impatient lift at the end of a sentence. For half a second, relief overrode common sense. Then I remembered Mark was in Twin Falls installing meters that week. I had seen the work order on Friday. I kept moving. The voice called once more, farther to my left now. "You're going the wrong way." By 6, clouds had gathered over the ridge. The forecast had been clear, but mountain weather does not care about forecasts. The light turned gray, and the temperature dropped hard enough that I could see my breath. I found the bench from the map, crossed a marshy patch, and reached the unnamed pond just as the first pellets of sleet hit my jacket. There was a cabin beside the water. It was not on my map. Calling it a cabin is generous. It was a square structure made of weathered logs, no larger than a garden shed, with a rusted stovepipe and one window covered by plywood. An old Forest Service shield had been nailed beside the door, but someone had scraped away the words. The door stood open 3 inches. I should have passed it. Instead, thunder rolled over the saddle, and the sleet became cold rain. I was already shivering. I took out my bear spray, pushed the door with my trekking pole, and looked inside. The room held a cot, a cast iron stove, and shelves packed with canned food. Recent mud marked the floor. On the wall above the cot hung dozens of red ribbons. Everyone had a name. Some had dates. Some had arrows. Several had short messages. "Wait here. He is close. Do not use the bridge." At the bottom of the wall was a ribbon that looked newer than the rest. Evan Mercer, September 17th. That day's date. The handwriting was mine. I know how that sounds. People say handwriting can look similar, especially in capital letters. But I mark sample bags all day. Meyer has a hooked leg because of the way I hold a marker. Mai leans forward. The name on that ribbon had both habits. I took the ribbons from my pocket and compared them. Same writing. Same pressure marks where the marker had paused. Behind me, the door creaked. I spun around with the spray raised. No one was there. Wind pushed rain through the opening. I slammed the door, dropped the wooden bar into its brackets, and stood listening. Something moved around the cabin. Not footsteps exactly, more like a hand dragging across the logs. It traveled along one wall, paused at the covered window, then continued to the back. The stovepipe rattled once. My satellite messenger showed that my check-in had sent, but the weather was slowing everything. I held the SOS button until the countdown began. The device told me to keep a clear view of the sky. Inside that cabin, under storm clouds and thick timber, I had no idea whether the signal would get out. The dragging stopped beside the door. A man spoke from the other side. "You took too long." It was my voice. Not similar. Mine. I heard the slight rasp I get after breathing cold air, and the way I swallow between words when I am nervous. The latch lifted, hit the wooden bar, and dropped. Then my voice said, "When the lightning hits, run to the bridge." I stayed still. Something knocked 3 times. "If you stay, he opens the window." The plywood over the window bowed inward. I moved before I had time to decide whether I was obeying a warning or falling into a trap. I pulled the bar, threw the door open, and ran into the rain. The pond was on my left. The saddle was somewhere east. Lightning flashed over the ridge, turning every wet trunk white for an instant. In that flash I saw red ribbons tied through the trees in a straight line. I followed them. The path dropped into a narrow gully where runoff foamed between rocks. Another flash showed a wooden footbridge ahead. It crossed a cut maybe 20 feet deep, swollen water hammering below. One of the cabin ribbons had said not to use the bridge. The voice had told me to run to it. I stopped at the first plank. On the far side stood a man in a tan jacket. He looked about my height. His hood covered his face. He lifted one arm and pointed down at the bridge. Another figure stepped from the trees behind me. That one wore my blue rain shell. I could not see his face either, but I saw the silver strip of my backpack and the orange handle of my trekking pole. For one insane moment, I thought someone had stolen gear from my truck and carried it 9 miles just to frighten me. Then lightning filled the gully again. The man behind me had my face. It was older, streaked with blood, and twisted with panic. He shouted over the water, "Don't cross! Cut left now!" The man in tan started onto the bridge. I jumped off the approach and forced my way into the brush on the left bank. Branches raked my cheeks. The ground vanished beneath fern and wet grass, and I slid on my side until my boots struck a fallen log. Above me would cracked. The bridge collapsed. The entire center section dropped into the gully. The man in tan went with it without making a sound. The current took the broken planks and carried them into darkness. When I looked back uphill, the other version of me was gone. I spent the next 4 hours sheltering beneath the roots of a fallen pine. My SOS finally connected sometime after midnight. A search and rescue team reached me shortly after sunrise, cold and bruised but otherwise okay. I told them about the cabin, the ribbons, and the man on the bridge. They treated me with the careful patience rescuers use when they think exposure has affected someone. 2 deputies and a Forest Service officer returned with us that afternoon. They found the pond. They found the gully. There was no cabin and no sign one had ever stood there. The ground where I placed it was covered with old-growth trees wider than my chest. The bridge was still intact. One rescuer crossed it twice while I watched. I quit trying to convince them after that. The photographs on my phone were no help. The first 2 ribbons appeared as blurry red streaks, although the rocks and trees around them were sharp. The cabin pictures were completely black. There was one image I did not remember taking. It showed me standing at the edge of the bridge in the rain. The angle was from the far side of the gully, where the man in the tan jacket had been. Behind me, barely visible among the trees, was the older version of me in the blue shell. He was not looking at the bridge. He was looking directly at whoever held the camera. I have not returned to the Sawtooths. I stopped using red flagging at work, too. My supervisor thinks it is an odd superstition, and maybe it is. But every September 17th, I wake before dawn with mud on my boots. This year, there was a strip of red ribbon tied around one ankle. In my handwriting, it said one word: soon. Story 2. The man in the ranger uniform knew my license plate before I told him. I did not understand why that mattered until much later, when Colin and I were locked inside a maintenance building 3 miles from the nearest public road. This was in Shenandoah National Park on a warm Sunday in early April. I was 28, living in Richmond, and trying to get back into hiking after a winter spent mostly at a desk. My fiancé, Colin, had found a 9-mile loop that started near Skyline Drive and dropped past an old homestead before climbing back along a ridge. It looked challenging without being stupid. We reached the parking pullout a little after 8. Only 3 other cars were there: a white Subaru, a dusty minivan, and a black pickup with a dented tailgate. The air smelled like wet leaves, and fog hung in the lower valleys. We signed the paper register, locked the car, and started down the trail. The first 2 hours were completely normal. We passed a family with 2 little girls, then an older man photographing wildflowers. By 10:30, the fog had burned away. Sunlight came through the bare branches, and the forest floor was green with new plants. We were crossing a narrow wooden bridge when a ranger called to us from the far side. He looked official at a glance. Gray shirt, green pants, flat brim hat, radio clipped to his shoulder. His name tag said D. Vale, and he carried one of those black citation books in his left hand. "Morning," he said. "You folks come out of the Overlook lot. Blue Honda, Virginia plate Kilo Tango 72. That was our car." Colin said yes, and the ranger wrote something in his book. I assumed he had checked the parking area. Rangers patrol trailheads. There was nothing strange about that. The strange part was how intently he studied us after Colin answered, like he was comparing our faces to a description. He said a black bear with 2 cubs had charged hikers near the Ridge Junction. The upper half of the loop was closed. We needed to take a service path marked with blue ribbon, follow it east for 2 miles, and wait at a maintenance station until staff could shuttle us back. Colin asked whether we could simply turn around. The ranger shook his head. "So crossed behind you about 15 minutes ago. We're moving everyone one direction until wildlife clears the drainage." He said it calmly, almost with boredom, which made the situation sound routine. Then he asked for our names and emergency contact information. That bothered me more than the bear. I had worked the front desk at a county office in college. When an official needs personal information, there is usually a form, a reason, and some explanation of what happens to it. Ranger Vale wrote our names, Colin's phone number, my address, and the name of my mother in a pocket notebook with no letterhead. When I hesitated over the address, he smiled. "Just so dispatch knows where to send a notification if somebody gets hurt." Colin gave him the information. He wanted to be cooperative, and I did not want to be the paranoid woman arguing with a ranger about a bear closure. Vale walked us off the bridge and pointed to a faint path cutting uphill. Blue plastic ribbons had been tied every 50 yards. "Maintenance station has a green metal roof," he said. "Door will be open. Stay inside until someone comes for you." Then he headed the way we had come. We followed the ribbons. The path was steeper than I expected and did not look recently maintained. Deadfall blocked it in several places. Thorny vines caught my sleeves, and the ground had no footprints except ours. After half an hour, Colin admitted it was odd that none of the other hikers had been sent this way. I tried calling the park information number. No signal. We kept climbing because the ranger had been specific about the bear behind us. That detail did its job. Every time I considered turning around, I pictured stepping between a mother and her cubs. The 4th ribbon was tied to a trail sign lying face down in the leaves. Colin turned it over. The sign read Fire Road, authorized vehicles only. Someone had removed it from a post and carried it at least 20 feet into the woods. A maintenance route would be an authorized path, he said, but he did not sound convinced. We reached the building just before noon. It was a low concrete structure with a faded green roof, exactly as Vale had described. No truck was parked outside. The windows were covered with steel shutters, and a pipe from a portable generator ran through a vent near the back. A printed Park Service notice on the door said temporary wildlife holding area. Please enter and wait for staff. Colin pulled the door open. Inside were 2 benches, a metal desk, stacks of bottled water, and a wall map. The place smelled like oil and mouse droppings. A battery lantern glowed on the desk, even though sunlight came through the doorway. There were backpacks beneath one bench. 5 of them. They were not dusty government packs. One had a child's pink water bottle in the side pocket. Another had a luggage tag with an Ohio address. Beside them sat a plastic bin filled with loose car keys. I whispered that we needed to leave. The door slammed behind us. Colin reached it in 2 steps, but the handle would not turn. A steel bar had dropped across the outside. At the same moment, the generator started behind the building. A speaker crackled above the desk. "Stay calm," Ranger Vale said. "The closure is still active." Colin shouted for him to open the door. "Wildlife staff are moving animals through the corridor," the speaker replied. "You are safer inside." I called 911. My phone displayed SOS only, tried for several seconds, then failed. Colin pounded on the door and yelled that we had seen the keys. There was a pause. When Vale spoke again, the friendly boredom had left his voice. You were told to wait. The generator settled into a steady hum. At first, I thought it powered the light and speaker. Then I noticed a sweet exhaust smell coming through the wall vent. Colin smelled it too. We pulled our shirts over our mouths and searched for another exit. The steel shutters were bolted from the outside. The ceiling vent was too narrow. The door hinges were protected by a welded plate. Whoever had prepared the room had thought through ordinary ways of escaping. The wall map showed the surrounding fire roads. Several locations had been circled in red, including our parking area. Next to each circle was a date and a car description. The white Subaru and dusty minivan from our trailhead were both listed. So was our Honda. Vale had not guessed the plate or checked it as part of a patrol. He had selected us before we entered the woods. Colin began coughing. We moved low, where the air was slightly better, and used a bench leg to strike the bottom of the door. It barely dented. I tried the radio on the desk, but it was only a shell with a speaker inside. The microphone cable had been cut. Vale! I screamed. What do you want? The speaker came alive. Wallets and phones on the desk. Put your car key in the red envelope. When staff confirms the lot is clear, the ventilation will improve. He said staff, as if there were multiple people. Maybe there were. I imagined someone already standing beside our car with the spare information we had given him, checking our address, deciding what could be taken before we got home. Colin wanted to comply. I did too. A car could be replaced. But the 5 packs under the bench told us compliance had not guaranteed anything for the people before us. I looked through them while Colin kept hitting the door. 1 pack held rain gear and snacks. 1 held diapers. The smallest had crayons, a stuffed rabbit, and an emergency whistle. There was no blood. No identification except the Ohio tag. That should have made me feel better. It did not. My head started to ache behind my eyes. The room seemed warmer. Colin's movements slowed, and he had to brace one hand against the wall. I crawled behind the desk, looking for anything we could use. That was where I found the floor drain. It was hidden under a rubber mat. The grate was larger than a normal drain, maybe 18 inches square, secured by 4 screws. Air moved through it. Not much, but enough to flutter dust at the edge. Colin used the metal clip from his hydration pack as a screwdriver. His hands had begun shaking, and twice he dropped it. We took turns, working 1 screw at a time while the generator pumped exhaust into the room. The speaker crackled. Last warning. Key in the envelope. I grabbed Colin's keys and held them above the desk so Vale could see them through whatever camera was watching us. Turn off the generator first. Key down. Air first. There was another pause. Then the generator coughed and stopped. The sudden silence felt huge. Colin removed the last screw. We lifted the grate and found a concrete drainage channel dropping beneath the building. It was narrow and black, with cold water running along the bottom. I could not see where it went. Outside, metal scraped against the door. Vale was lifting the bar. I slid feet first into the drain. My shoulders barely cleared. Colin handed down both packs, then lowered himself after me and pulled the grate loosely into place above his head. The door opened while we were still beneath the floor. Boots crossed the room. You made that harder than it had to be, Vale said. He was speaking to an empty room, but his voice sounded close enough to touch. The grate shifted as he stepped on it. Dust rained onto Colin's hair. We crawled. The channel descended for maybe 30 feet, then narrowed where roots had broken through the concrete. Water soaked my pants and filled my boots. Behind us, the grate clanged open. A flashlight beam reached into the pipe. I pushed forward until the concrete scraped both sides of my ribs. The channel ended at a rusted mesh screen clogged with leaves. Beyond it, daylight shone over a steep ditch. The screen did not move. Colin braced his feet against the wall and pushed with both hands. Nothing. Behind us, Vale lay down and aimed the flashlight into the drain. There's nowhere out, he called. Come back and we can reset. Reset. That word frightened me more than any threat he had made. I kicked the screen until one rusted bolt tore free. Colin joined me. On the fourth kick, the frame folded outward, and both of us spilled into the ditch in a wave of black water and leaves. We did not run back toward the trail. We followed the drainage downhill. It was rough and exposed, but it kept us away from the blue ribbons. We heard Vale above us twice. He never came into view. After 40 minutes, we reached the real fire road. A park utility truck appeared less than 10 minutes later. I stepped into the road waving both arms, and the driver nearly put the truck in the ditch to avoid me. The woman driving was an actual ranger named Alvarez. The first thing she did was put us in the locked cab and call law enforcement. The second was tell us there was no bear closure anywhere in that district. Officers searched the building that afternoon. Vale was gone. The generator, ribbons, wall map, packs, and keys were still there. The outside bar on the door had been wiped clean. The uniform was convincing because it was real. Investigators later told us it had been stolen from a seasonal ranger's car 2 years earlier. The name tag was fake. No current or former employee named D. Vale matched the man we described. Police identified 4 of the 5 backpacks. They belonged to hikers whose cars had been stolen from different trailheads over the previous 18 months. All 4 people had eventually been found alive, abandoned on remote roads after being held overnight. None had seen the person who took them. The 5th pack, the one with the stuffed rabbit, was never publicly connected to anyone. Our Honda was still at the overlook, but the dash camera showed it had left the lot while we were trapped. Someone drove it for 53 minutes, then returned it to the exact same space. Nothing seemed missing. 3 weeks later, Colin noticed the plastic cover beneath the steering column was loose. A locksmith found a copied key taped inside, along with a GPS tracker wired behind the fuse box. The tracker had stored 2 destinations. One was the maintenance building. The other was our house in Richmond. We moved before our lease ended and sold the Honda. Colin and I still hike, but we verify every closure on the park website before leaving home, and we do not give personal information to anyone without seeing identification. Last April, on the 2nd anniversary of that hike, an envelope arrived at our new address with no return name. Inside was a single strip of blue ribbon and a photocopy of the page we had signed at the trailhead. Our names were circled. Underneath, someone had written, address corrected. 10 original hiking horror stories. Story 3. Franconia Ridge, New Hampshire. At 4:08 in the afternoon, a mountain rescue dispatcher told me to leave my brother behind. He did not suggest it. He did not explain that rescuers were coming for Sam, or that splitting up gave us the best chance. He simply said, in the same calm voice he had used for the previous 20 minutes, "Your brother is slowing you down. Continue without him." Then the radio went silent. This happened on Franconia Ridge in New Hampshire 4 winters ago. I was 34 and living in Boston, where I worked as a physical therapist. My younger brother, Sam, had finished his first half marathon that fall and decided that made him ready for serious winter hiking. Our friend Mitchell had more mountain experience than either of us, so when he suggested a January loop over Little Haystack, Lincoln, and Lafayette, I trusted his judgment. The forecast called for cold but stable weather. We packed traction, snowshoes, goggles, spare layers, emergency bivvies, and enough food for an unplanned night. We left our route with 2 people and started before sunrise. For most of the climb, it was one of the best days I had ever spent outside. The sky turned pink through bare branches. Snow squeaked under our boots. Above tree line, the mountains rolled away in white layers beneath a hard blue sky. The change came near Mount Lincoln. A thin cloud moved over the ridge, and within minutes the peaks disappeared. Wind slammed into us from the west. Spindrift filled the air so completely that Sam, 10 feet ahead, looked like a shadow behind frosted glass. Mitchell checked the weather meter clipped to his pack. The temperature was falling, and gusts were pushing past 50 miles an hour. We turned back immediately. That was the correct decision made 10 minutes too late. On the descent toward Little Haystack, Sam caught a crampon point and went down hard. He twisted before landing, and I heard him shout through the wind, His left knee had dislocated and snapped back into place. Nothing appeared broken, but he could not put full weight on it. We got him behind a rock outcrop and added insulation. Mitchell activated his satellite beacon. I assessed Sam's knee as well as I could with gloves on. He could move his foot and feel his toes, but every shift made him pale. Visibility dropped to maybe 20 feet. That was when Mitchell saw the orange box. It stood on a metal post just below the ridge, half buried in rime ice. A white sign on the front read Emergency Communication, Lift Receiver. I had never noticed one on trail maps, but everything about it looked official. A coiled cord connected a black handset to the box. Mitchell knocked ice from the latch and lifted the receiver. Someone answered immediately. The man identified himself as Dispatcher Cole with Mountain Rescue. He already knew a beacon had activated near Lincoln. Mitchell gave our names, location, clothing colors, and Sam's condition. Cole told us the storm was blocking helicopter access and that ground teams were at least 3 hours away. He said staying exposed would kill us before then. According to him, an old Weather Service bunker sat 400 yards down the east side of the ridge. We could reach it by following a buried communications cable marked with yellow stakes. The structure had a heater, blankets, and a hardwired phone. Mitchell found the first yellow stake 30 feet below the radio. The route was steep, but it led away from the wind. We made a sling from a pack strap and moved Sam between us. Every few minutes, Cole called through small speaker boxes mounted on later stakes. He seemed able to track our progress. Past the split boulder and bear right. Do not stop at the first door. That chamber floods. You have 200 yards remaining. His voice was steady and precise. It gave me something to focus on besides Sam's breathing and the cold burning through my gloves. Then we reached a place where the cable crossed a snowfield. Mitchell stopped. He used his pole to probe ahead, then dropped to one knee and brushed away the top layer. Beneath 6 inches of fresh snow was a smooth slab of wind-packed ice. The slope rolled over sharply below us, disappearing into white. "This is avalanche terrain," he said. The speaker on the nearest stake clicked. "Cross one at a time." Mitchell stared at it. He had not pressed any button. "How are you hearing us?" he asked. Cole ignored the question. "Cross one at a time. Maintain 30 feet of separation." Mitchell pulled out his map and compass. The bunker, if it existed where Cole described, should have been southeast. The cable was taking us north, toward a broad avalanche gully above Walker Ravine. He lifted the speaker box from its stake. There was no microphone grill, only a cracked plastic face and 2 wires entering the snow. "Cole," I said, "confirm our coordinates." The answer came without hesitation, but the numbers placed us almost half a mile south of where we actually stood. Mitchell told him the coordinates were wrong. For the first time, the dispatcher's tone changed. "Your instruments are affected by the storm. A magnetic compass isn't putting us in Walker Ravine," Mitchell said. The speaker hissed. Then Cole addressed me by name. "Lena, your brother is deteriorating. You are the medical professional. You understand the cost of delay." I had told him I was a physical therapist, but not my first name. Mitchell had given our full names at the original radio. I tried to convince myself that explained it. Then Cole said, his lips are turning blue. Sam's face was covered by a balaclava and ski goggles. Mitchell and I were blocking him from the speaker. No camera was visible in that white emptiness. I looked uphill. For 1 second, when the blowing snow thinned, I saw a person standing beside the previous yellow stake. He wore white overalls with a hood. No pack, no goggles that I could see. He was close enough that he should have been struggling against the wind, but he stood perfectly upright. Then the snow closed around him. I told Mitchell what I had seen. He cut the cable with the serrated edge of his rescue tool. The speaker died in the middle of a word. We turned south, moving across the slope instead of down it. Sam could barely walk now. We took 10 steps, rested, then took 10 more. The wind tried to push us toward the ravine. After 5 minutes, another speaker crackled somewhere ahead. Cole's voice came through the storm. "You have left the safe corridor." We changed direction. A different speaker came alive to our right. "Return to the cable." The boxes were all over the slope. We could not see the stakes until we were nearly on top of them, but his voice jumped from one to the next, surrounding us. "Ground team is delayed. Your beacon is not transmitting. Your brother is slowing you down." That was when he told me to leave Sam. I picked up the nearest yellow stake and tore it from the snow. A black cable ran from the speaker into a shallow trench. Not toward the ridge, uphill and north. Mitchell understood at the same time I did. The cable did not lead to a rescue bunker. It led to whoever was talking. We had two bad choices: continue south through a wideout while dragging Sam, or follow the cable toward the person who had deliberately guided us above an avalanche path. We followed the cable uphill. It climbed across the slope for about 100 yards, then vanished beneath a concrete lip hidden by snow. A steel door was set into the mountain. No weather service markings. No window. Warm air drifted from a vent and carved a hollow in the snow above it. Mitchell hammered on the door. "Open it," Cole answered through a speaker beside the frame. "The shelter is at capacity. You said it was empty. Your group did not follow instructions." I looked through a narrow gap at the bottom of the door. Light moved inside. Someone was standing on the other side. Sam sagged against me. We had been exposed for nearly 2 hours, and the sheltered hollow beside the door was the first place out of the wind. We wrapped him in both emergency bivvies and pressed him against the warm concrete. Mitchell found a metal cabinet mounted beside the vent. Inside were batteries, cable junctions, and a row of labeled switches. One label read Ridge Array. Another read Camera Heat. There had been cameras after all. The speaker clicked. "Step away from the controls." Mitchell threw every switch. Fans stopped inside the bunker. The warm air from the vent faded. A red light appeared above the door. Cole's calm voice finally broke. "Turn those back on." We did not answer. Something heavy struck the other side of the door. The handle moved, but a chain inside kept it from opening more than an inch. Through the gap, I saw part of a face, gray beard, pale cheek, one furious eye. "You'll kill the repeater," he said. Mitchell pushed his phone into the gap and took several pictures. Cole recoiled. The door slammed shut. We waited in the hollow with Sam between us. I do not know whether shutting down the equipment disabled Cole's heat, his air supply, or only his ability to watch us. 10 minutes later, a small exhaust pipe above the door began coughing black smoke. Then it stopped. The steel door opened. A man in white coveralls came out wearing a military-style respirator and carrying a short pry bar. He swung at Mitchell without saying anything. Mitchell blocked the first strike with his pack. I grabbed the man's sleeve and pulled, using his momentum the way I had learned in a workplace self-defense class. All three of us fell into the snow. The slope beneath the bunker made a deep settling sound. Mitchell froze. Nobody move. A crack raced across the snow 20 feet below us. The man in white tried to stand. His boot punched through the slab. The entire surface dropped several inches and began sliding. Mitchell grabbed the door frame. I caught Sam's pack strap with one hand and buried my ice axe with the other. The man in white slid past me on his back. He clawed once at my boot, missed, and disappeared into the blowing snow as the slab carried him toward the ravine. The avalanche did not take the bunker. It stripped the slope below it and left us clinging to hard ice at the edge of the fracture line. We crawled inside. The bunker had heat, blankets, food, 6 video monitors, and a radio powerful enough to reach state police. One screen showed the emergency call box on the ridge. Others showed different sections of trail. On a shelf were binders filled with dates, weather conditions, group sizes, and short judgments written beside hikers' names. Strong. Unprepared. Will split. Leave the injured. Search teams reached us 3 hours later. Sam was evacuated with hypothermia and a badly damaged knee. He eventually recovered, though he needed surgery and months of therapy. The man in white was never found. Investigators identified him from Mitchell's photograph as Warren Cole, a former volunteer rescue dispatcher dismissed 11 years earlier for interfering with calls. He had become convinced that modern rescue teams endangered themselves by trying to save everyone. According to people who knew him, He talked constantly about correct triage and believed the mountains should decide who deserved to leave. The emergency radio system had been disconnected 9 years before our hike. Cole had repaired part of it and built his own camera network from surplus equipment. Police linked his notes to at least 7 rescues and 2 deaths, but they could not prove he caused either fatality. The official report says Cole was probably carried into Walker Ravine and buried beneath the avalanche debris. Probably. Every January, the 3 of us meet for dinner instead of hiking. We do it on the same weekend, and none of us talks much about the ridge. Last year, Mitchell brought the satellite beacon we had used that day. He had downloaded its full message log after noticing something strange in his account. Our SOS had transmitted successfully at 3:51 p.m., 17 minutes before Cole told us help was 3 hours away. At 4:06, the rescue coordinator sent a reply telling us to remain on the ridge and shelter behind rocks. The message was marked delivered. None of us saw it. At 4:08, someone used Mitchell's device to send a response. 3 words: leaving injured behind. Story 4. Canyonlands National Park, Utah. The water bottles were cold. That was the first thing Dana noticed. The steel box had been sitting in direct Utah sunlight, miles from the nearest road, but every bottle inside felt as if it had come out of a refrigerator. The second thing we noticed was my name written on the lid. Alex Ruiz, 2 bottles each. The handwriting was neat. The ink was fresh. A drop at the end of the Z had not fully dried. This happened in the Needles district of Canyonlands National Park in late May. Dana and I had been married for 6 years, and backpacking was one of the few hobbies neither of us had surrendered to work. She taught middle school science in Albuquerque. I designed sprinkler systems. Twice a year, we turned off our phones and went somewhere with more rock than people. That trip was supposed to be 3 days and 2 nights. We had a permit for a backcountry site, a printed itinerary, and 6 liters of water each. The route crossed open desert, climbed through sandstone joints, and looped past several old cowboy camps. Hard but familiar. We had done similar trips in the area. We started at dawn. By 10, heat shimmer was moving above the slick rock, and the straps of my pack had left dark lines across my shirt. We had seen one guided group near the trailhead, but no one after the first mile. The metal box sat in a strip of shade beneath a ledge at the junction to Devil's Kitchen. It looked like an army ammunition case painted white. A laminated card on top showed the park emblem and the words emergency water, registered permit holders only. Neither of us had heard of permit-specific water caches. Dana lifted one bottle and held it against her cheek. "This was put here 10 minutes ago," she said. I searched the ledges. The desert looked empty all the way to the horizon. We did not need the water, so we left it. I photographed the box and tried to send the image through my satellite communicator. The message remained queued. As we walked away, a faint buzzing passed overhead. I looked up expecting an insect. A small gray drone hovered against the sun, almost invisible in the glare. The moment I raised my hand, it climbed above the sandstone and disappeared. We argued about turning back. The sensible choice was obvious. Someone had our permit name, knew our route, and had reached the junction ahead of us. But the trailhead was already 6 exposed miles behind, and our first campsite was only 4 miles ahead. There should have been other permit holders nearby. We decided to continue to camp, send a message, and leave by the shortest route in the morning. For the next hour, nothing happened. Then we found a black hiking boot placed upright in the middle of the trail. It was a men's size 11, sun-faded and split along one side. A white number had been painted on the toe, 14. 50 yards later, another boot stood beside a cairn. Women's size 8. Number 9. The third was a child's boot. Dana stopped walking. "We go back now." We turned around and found the first cairn had changed. I was sure of it. The route through that section bent around a tower of sandstone shaped like a thumb. Now the cairn pointed into a narrow wash on the opposite side. Our footprints should have shown the correct direction, but wind had erased them from the loose sand. I took out the paper map and compass. The wash ran west, generally toward the junction, so we followed it rather than trust the stones. 20 minutes later, the wash ended at the white water box. We had made a circle. This time the lid stood open. Only 2 bottles remained. On top of them lay Dana's red bandana, the one she had tied to the outside of her pack. Neither of us had felt anyone remove it. The drone buzzed again, somewhere above the rim. We left the wash at once and climbed onto open slick rock. From there, our compass and the shape of distant formations gave us a reliable direction. We moved south toward a marked 4-wheel drive road used by park staff. It meant crossing rough terrain, but vehicles sometimes traveled there. The heat became punishing. We drank carefully and covered our necks. Every patch of shade seemed to contain movement. Once I saw a flash from a high ledge, like sunlight on binocular lenses. Near 3 in the afternoon, we heard an engine. A tan utility vehicle appeared between the rocks ahead. It had a park-style arrowhead decal on the door and an amber light on the roof. A man in a khaki shirt stepped out and waved. Relief hit so quickly that I nearly ran to him. Dana caught my wrist. "Where are the tire tracks?" she whispered. The vehicle stood on a patch of soft sand. There were tracks behind it, but they did not continue from the bend where it had supposedly appeared. They began about 20 feet back, as if the vehicle had been driven out of the rock itself. Then I saw that the windows were painted black. The entire thing was a plywood shell built around a small trailer. The man kept waving. "You two all right?" he called. "We got your emergency message." My satellite device still showed the photo as unsent. We backed away. His smile disappeared. He was maybe 40, lean, with sunburned skin and mirrored glasses. The shirt looked close to a ranger uniform, but there was no badge or nameplate. A black pistol sat openly on his belt. "It's too hot to play games," he said. "You need water." Dana asked who he was. He pointed toward the trailer. "Shade first. Questions after." The drone rose from behind the plywood vehicle and hovered above us. We ran. Not blindly. 50 yards behind us, a slot between 2 sandstone fins offered shade and a route too narrow for the trailer. We squeezed into it while the man shouted. The slot curved sharply and descended through deep sand. The drone followed overhead until the walls closed above us. For a few minutes, all we heard was our breathing and the scrape of our packs. Then a stone clicked somewhere behind. He had entered the slot. The passage narrowed. Dana went first, turning sideways to fit. My pack caught twice. The man did not hurry. His footsteps maintained the same steady pace, close enough that we could hear sand grinding under his boots. "You're going toward a dead end," he called. We ignored him. He laughed. "Everybody does." The slot opened into a circular chamber with vertical walls. There was no exit at ground level. He had told the truth. The chamber contained the rest of the water cache operation. Cases of bottled water were stacked beneath tarps. A folding table held a laptop, drone batteries, permit printouts, and rows of labeled plastic bags. Wallets, phones, jewelry, prescription bottles. Along one wall, hiking boots hung from metal hooks. Each toe had a white number. Dana picked up the nearest water bottle and smelled the opening. The cap ring had been cut and glued back together. Tiny white crystals clung inside the threads. I pressed the SOS button on my communicator. The screen lit for half a second and died. The battery compartment was empty. The man had taken the battery when he removed Dana's bandana. He had been close enough to unzip my hip pocket, open the device, and close it again without either of us noticing. "Packs down," he called from the passage. "Hands where I can see them." We looked for a climb. The chamber walls were 30 feet high, smooth except for a vertical crack in the north side. It was too narrow for a person, but old wooden pegs had been hammered into it at irregular intervals. Above them, a rope disappeared over the rim. Dana understood before I did. The trailer tracks began from nowhere because there was another access above us. This was not a dead end for him. I boosted Dana to the first peg. The man entered the chamber as she reached the second. He had the pistol in his hand now, pointed at the ground. "Don't," he said. I stepped between him and Dana. He did not look excited or angry. That made it worse. He looked tired, like a worker dealing with a machine that had jammed. "Nobody needs to get hurt," he said. "Heat makes people confused. You drink, you sleep, you wake up near the road with less weight to carry." I glanced at the numbered boots. "And the people who don't wake up." His eyes moved to the wall for a fraction of a second. Dana climbed higher. He raised the pistol. I threw a water bottle at his face. He flinched and fired. The shot inside the chamber was enormous. Stone chips cut my cheek. I charged him before he could aim again, hitting his chest with both shoulders. We went down against the folding table. The laptop crashed to the ground. Drone batteries scattered. He struck the side of my head with the pistol, and light burst across my vision. I held onto his gun arm while he tried to roll on top of me. Above us, Dana reached the rope. She did not climb out. She pulled. A wooden ladder dropped from a concealed slot in the rim. It swung down and struck the man across the back. The pistol slid into the sand. I grabbed it and threw it into the narrow crack. He lunged for me, but Dana had already started climbing down. She landed on the table, kicked the laptop aside, and sprayed him directly in the face with the bare deterrent we carried for camps farther north. He screamed and stumbled blindly around the chamber. We climbed. The ladder ended at a camouflaged platform on the rim. From there we saw a real utility road less than half a mile away. The plywood Ranger vehicle concealed a small all-terrain cart and a second water tank. A solar panel powered the laptop and chargers below. We pulled the ladder up and wrapped its rope around a steel anchor. The man recovered enough to climb the pegs, but without the hanging ladder, he could not get above the smooth final 10 feet. He shouted threats, then offered money, then began calling for help. We used his satellite terminal. Law enforcement rangers arrived in less than an hour. They arrested him in the chamber. His name was Leonard Pike, and he had once worked for a contractor that maintained backcountry toilets and water systems. That gave him access to permit itineraries, trailhead information, and restricted roads. Toxicology found a veterinary sedative in the bottles. Investigators believed Pike drugged hikers, stole from them, and moved them near roads before they regained consciousness. The numbered boots were trophies, but also records. Some numbers matched reports from people who had been found disoriented miles from their expected routes. Number 14 belonged to a man who had disappeared the previous spring. Pike claimed he never killed anyone. He said the desert made its own decisions after he left people sleeping. He was convicted on multiple kidnapping and assault charges, but several missing person cases remain unresolved. Dana and I testified at his trial. The prosecutor showed part of the video archive from the drone. We watched ourselves approach the water box, then turn away. We saw Pike follow us from one strip of shade to the next, sometimes less than 10 feet behind us. There was one recording the prosecution could not explain. It was time-stamped 6 hours before we reached the trailhead. The camera looked down into the circular chamber. Pike was asleep at the table. The hanging boots moved slightly in the night air. Then a woman climbed down the wooden ladder. She wore Dana's red bandana over her hair. She placed 4 cold water bottles in the white box, wrote my name on the lid, and climbed out. Her face never turned toward the camera. Dana says it was not her. I believe her. But when police returned the evidence from our packs, the red bandana smelled strongly of freezer frost, and there was a white number painted inside one corner. It was 15. Story 5. My son heard me calling from the swamp while I was standing beside him. The voice came from somewhere beyond the cypress trees, soft and irritated, using the exact tone I use when he is taking too long. "Luke, come here." I found the marker. He looked at me. I had not spoken. This happened in Big Cypress National Preserve in South Florida. Luke was 17, old enough to believe he was impossible to frighten, and young enough to treat every warning as a challenge. I was 45 and had spent most of his life working as a respiratory therapist in Fort Myers. We had done plenty of ordinary hikes together, but that weekend was our first swamp trek. It was the dry season. The ranger at the visitor center said water on our section of the Florida Trail should be ankle to knee deep, with a few muddy pockets. We carried high boots, trekking poles, insect nets, a satellite messenger, and more water than we expected to drink. Our plan was to hike 7 miles to a raised campsite near an old fire tower, stay one night, and return the next morning. The trail began in open pine country. Sunlight flickered across saw palmetto. Woodpeckers hammered somewhere overhead, and tiny lizards shot across the path. For the first hour, Luke teased me for moving slowly while I tested every dark patch with my pole. Then the trail entered the cypress. The water changed the sound of everything. Each step made a thick sucking noise. Insects buzzed close to our ears. The trees rose from black water on swollen roots, and strands of moss hung low enough to brush our shoulders. Orange blazes marked the route, but several had been painted over with gray. New strips of white plastic hung farther east, leading toward deeper water. We stopped at the junction, comparing the compass to the map. That was when the voice called Luke. He assumed I was playing a joke until it spoke again. "Luke, hurry up." It sounded exactly like me. Same slight breathlessness from the heat. Same habit of emphasizing his name when I was annoyed. I shouted, "Who's there?" The swamp answered in my voice. "Who's there?" Luke laughed once, but there was no humor in it. He said it had to be another hiker using a recording. I wanted that explanation to work. We had posted a short video at the trailhead, and my voice was in it. Someone could have seen us, copied the audio, and gone ahead. What I could not explain was how they had reached the flooded woods without leaving ripples. We returned to the orange-blazed route. For 20 minutes, nothing followed us. Then my voice came from behind. "The white markers are faster." We kept moving. "You're going the wrong way." The words traveled through the trees without echo. Sometimes they came from 10 yards away. Sometimes from so far off they were barely louder than insects. The tone never changed. It sounded mildly impatient, never threatening. Luke took out his phone and began recording. "Say something now," he called. There was silence. He lowered the phone. My voice whispered beside his left ear. "Now." Luke nearly fell. Water splashed to his waist as I grabbed his pack. We decided to turn around. The compass said west. The sun agreed. We followed our back trail for almost an hour and never reached the pine forest. Instead, we came to a place where the orange markers formed a complete circle around a cypress dome. The same tree appeared 3 times, distinguished by a strip of blue fabric snagged on one root. Our footprints churned the mud in every direction. Someone had moved the blazes. That possibility was almost comforting. Paint and plastic meant people. People could be understood. We used the compass alone, bearing northwest. The ground grew softer. Mud swallowed my poles to the handles. Twice we detoured around channels too deep to cross. Near 4 o'clock, Luke spotted a wooden platform among the trees. It stood 6 feet above the water on 4 posts, with a ladder and a sheet metal roof. The fire tower marked on our map should have been nearby, so I assumed it was the raised campsite. We climbed up, removed our wet boots, and checked the satellite messenger. Our route line showed a clean, straight track from the trailhead to the platform. According to the device, we had never circled or changed direction. I sent an SOS with a text explaining that trail markers had been altered and we were disoriented. The screen showed the message as pending. Luke replayed his phone recording. At first, it held only splashing in our voices. Then, during the 10 seconds when he had challenged the unseen speaker, a third voice came through clearly. It was a man. "Don't answer her." Luke's face changed. The voice belonged to his father. Daniel had died from pancreatic cancer 3 years earlier. Near the end, the disease and medication had roughened his voice into a low whisper. The words on Luke's phone had that exact exhausted rasp. We listened again. After "don't answer her," Daniel's voice added something too faint to make out. Luke held the phone against his ear. "He says it learns when you answer." The light faded quickly beneath the cypress canopy. We decided to stay on the platform until morning. I tied our packs to the railing, set the satellite messenger where it had the best view of the sky, and kept the emergency flare launcher beside me. At sunset, the swamp became loud with frogs. At full dark, every frog stopped at once. Water moved below the platform. The ripples came from 3 directions, converging on the ladder. Luke aimed his flashlight down. The beam showed black water, pale trunks, and rings spreading between them. My voice spoke beneath us. "Luke, your dad is here." Then Daniel called his name. Luke gripped the railing. I could feel him shaking through the wood. "Buddy," Daniel's voice said. "I need help getting up." The ladder creaked. Nothing was visible on it. The bottom rung sank beneath the water, then rose, as if weight had shifted to the rung above. The next one groaned. Luke stepped forward before I caught him. His father's voice broke into the gentle laugh Daniel used whenever Luke embarrassed himself. "It's okay. Your mom can't see me." I pulled Luke away from the edge and clipped both of our belts to a safety line around the center post. He fought me for a second, not because he believed Daniel was alive, he later said, but because the voice made belief feel possible. The third rung creaked. I fired bear spray across the ladder. The cloud drifted back into our faces. We coughed and cried while something continued climbing without making a sound. The platform shifted under a heavy impact. 4 wet finger marks appeared on the top rung. They were too long and too narrow to be human. Luke kicked the ladder outward. It was attached by 2 rusted bolts. One snapped. The ladder swung sideways and struck a post, throwing water in a wide arc. Whatever had been climbing hit the water. The splash was enormous. Something moved away beneath the surface, fast enough to leave a V-shaped wake between the trees. Then my own voice started laughing. It came from all around the platform. We did not sleep. The voices changed through the night. My mother called from one side. Luke's middle school football coach called from another. A little girl neither of us recognized cried for help near the tree line. Every voice belonged to someone we had spoken about during the hike. Just before dawn, our satellite messenger chimed. The rescue coordinator asked us to confirm our condition. I typed that we were uninjured on a raised platform near the old fire tower. A reply arrived 2 minutes later. Message received. Rescue canceled at user request. I had not canceled anything. The device chimed again, as if sending a message. The outgoing log showed a new line. False alarm. Hiking out. Luke and I stared at the screen. My voice spoke from the water below. False alarm. Hiking out. The messenger went dark. At sunrise, we saw the fire tower. It rose above the trees maybe half a mile north, exactly where the compass said it should be. The platform we had occupied was not marked on our map and appeared much older in daylight. Deep scratches covered the posts. Names and dates had been carved into the railing, some going back to the 1970s. At the base of the center post, someone had carved a warning. Don't let it finish your sentence. We left as soon as there was enough light. With the tower visible, navigation was simple. We waded north, ignoring every voice. Halfway there, Daniel spoke behind us. "Luke, I'm proud of you." Luke stopped. Those were almost the last words his father had said to him. Daniel had been too weak to finish. He had managed, "Luke, I'm proud," before slipping back into sleep. He died that night. The voice in the swamp waited. "He never got to finish," Luke whispered. Daniel's voice repeated, "I'm proud of you." Luke turned toward it. I covered his mouth with my hand. The voice had finished Daniel's sentence because Luke had finished it first. The water erupted behind us. Something struck my pack hard enough to spin me around. I saw a pale shape under the surface, long as a person but moving sideways. Luke pulled me forward. We abandoned the packs and ran as well as anyone can run through knee-deep swamp. The tower ladder was enclosed by a locked metal cage. The pale wake came through the trees. Luke climbed the cage. I pushed him from below, then followed. We reached the first landing as water slammed against the metal. The entire tower vibrated. From beneath us, my voice shouted, "Help! It has my son!" An airboat engine answered in the distance. "Rescuers!" The thing below heard them too. It began screaming in Luke's voice. "We're okay! Go back! We're okay!" The airboat slowed. I took the flare launcher from my belt. We had lost the rest of our gear, but I had clipped it to me during the night. I fired above the trees. The red flare rose through morning mist and hung over the tower. The airboat accelerated. The water beneath us went still. Rangers reached the tower 10 minutes later. They found us on the landing, soaked and barely coherent. They searched the area for another person and found none. One ranger suggested we had encountered an alligator below the platform and experienced auditory effects from stress, exhaustion, and swamp acoustics. I accepted that explanation in the official report because I wanted to go home. Our abandoned packs were recovered that afternoon. Nothing had been taken. Luke's phone still worked, although it had been submerged in a side pocket. The audio recording was 73 minutes longer than when we last played it. The phone's location history made even less sense. During those extra 73 minutes, it placed the device beneath the platform, then 2 miles east, then back inside Luke's pack without showing any movement between those points. Most of the new section contained water sounds. Near the end, Daniel's voice said, "They're at the tower." Then my voice answered, "I know." A third voice asked, "Which one do we keep?" For a long time, there was only splashing. Finally, Luke's voice said, "The mother. She answers first." I never answered a voice in that swamp after the first time. At least, I do not remember doing it. But 6 months ago, Luke sent me an audio clip recorded outside his apartment in Tampa. Someone stood in the dark parking lot, beyond the reach of the lights, calling him in my mildly irritated voice. "Luke, come here." I found the marker. I was home in Fort Myers. Story 6. Our backcountry permit listed 6 hikers. There were only 5 of us. The ranger noticed it at the permit desk in Glacier National Park. He read the names aloud while we stood there half awake with coffee cups in our hands. Nolan Price. That was me. Tara Kim. Mina Shah. Chris Bell. Gabriel Torres. Then he read, Owen Beck. We all looked at one another. Tara had submitted the application, and she insisted she had entered 5 names. The ranger turned the monitor so she could see. Owen had a birth date, emergency contact, and an Ohio address. He had even checked the box confirming bear safety training. "Friend who canceled?" the ranger asked. None of us knew anyone named Owen Beck. He crossed out the 6th line, printed the permit, and told us a corrupted form had probably merged 2 applications. We laughed about getting a free mystery friend and left. That should have been the end of it. This happened 3 years ago on the Gunsight Pass Trail in northern Montana. The 5 of us had met in graduate school and tried to plan one serious hike every summer. By then we were scattered across 4 states, married or engaged, and busy enough that the trip felt like a small miracle. Our route was a 2-night traverse. The first day climbed past waterfalls and open slopes to a backcountry lake. The second crossed the pass and dropped toward a historic chalet. None of us were experts, but we had years of experience and good equipment. We started late because of the permit confusion. The morning was bright, with cool air coming off the water. Bare grass covered the hillsides. For the first few miles, we talked over one another, trying to compress a year of life into one trail conversation. Around noon, a man caught up with us. He was about our age, maybe 35, wearing a blue cap and carrying a small gray pack. He smiled when he reached the group. "There you are," he said. "I thought you'd already hit the lake." We stared at him. He looked directly at Tara. "Owen, from the permit disaster?" Tara's face changed from confusion to recognition, so quickly I wondered if I had missed a joke. "Oh," she said. "Right. Owen." Chris laughed and shook his hand. Mina asked where he had parked. Even Gabe moved aside to make room for him on the trail. I was the only one who still seemed confused. Owen explained that he was a friend of Tara's former roommate. He had joined the trip late, which was why the rest of us had not met him. Tara nodded along, although she had been adamant at the ranger station that she did not know the name. When I reminded her, she frowned. "I meant I didn't know why he was on the original application," she said. "I added him later." Owen gave me an embarrassed smile. "Sorry. I should have introduced myself in the group chat." He fit in almost immediately. He knew Chris had changed jobs. He asked Mina about her wedding venue. He remembered the story of Gabe getting food poisoning on our Yosemite trip even though that had happened before Tara supposedly met him. Every question I asked had an answer. His address matched the permit. His emergency contact was his mother. He had taken a shuttle from the eastern side and hiked fast to catch us. The answers were smooth, but none were verifiable without cell service. At our lunch stop, I pulled Gabe aside. "Do you remember him?" Gabe glanced toward the others. Owen was making them laugh about something. "No," he said quietly, "but I remember his name." "What does that mean?" "I don't know." When Tara said Owen, it felt familiar, like a person from a class I skipped too often. We agreed to stay close and not mention our concern until we could talk to everyone without Owen hearing. That opportunity never came. He moved through the group constantly, dropping back to help someone over rock, then taking the lead. Whenever Gabe and I walked together, Owen appeared between us with a question. At the campsite, the metal food storage box had a paper reservation slip clipped to it. 6 names were printed beneath our permit number. Owen Beck was one of them. Gabe Torres was not. I showed Tara. She read the list twice and shrugged. "Maybe Gabe's under your tent reservation." There was no separate tent reservation. She knew that. When I pointed it out, she became irritated. "Why are you being weird about Owen?" "Because this morning you said he didn't exist." Owen was standing behind her. I had not heard him approach. "That's a harsh way to put it," he said. His smile remained friendly, but his eyes did not. That evening we ate beside the lake. The mountains turned purple in the water. Owen told a story about our first group hike in Vermont, the year after graduate school. I remembered that trip clearly. We had rented a terrible cabin with a broken heater. Gabe had slipped while crossing a stream and ruined his phone. The 5 of us spent a night playing cards by headlamp. In Owen's version, he ruined the phone. Everyone laughed at the memory, even Gabe. I looked at him across the circle. His smile faded. He mouthed, "I don't know." Owen continued. With each detail, my memory shifted at the edges. The color of the cabin changed. Owen sat beside the card table. Gabe's face moved farther into the background, becoming hard to picture. I dug a pen from my pocket and wrote Gabriel Torres across my forearm. Owen stopped talking. The others asked what I was doing, making sure I remember who came with us. Gabe wrote his own name. After a second, he wrote all 5 original names beneath it. I made Tara, Mina, and Chris do the same. They complained, but something in my voice convinced them. Owen held out his arm. His skin was already covered in writing. Our names appeared in blue ink from wrist to elbow. Some were old and faded. Some looked freshly written. Gabe had been crossed out again and again. Owen pulled down his sleeve. "People forget things in the mountains," he said. No one spoke after that. We did not sleep much. Owen had claimed the tent he supposedly brought, a green one pitched 30 yards from ours. Through the night, I heard him whispering. Sometimes he used Tara's voice, sometimes Chris's. Once I heard my own voice telling the Vermont story with Owen in every scene. Before dawn, Gabe woke me. His name had faded from my arm. Not smeared, faded. The other 4 names remained dark, but Gabriel Torres looked years old. We woke everyone and packed. Owen's green tent was gone. The ground beneath it was untouched, with no flattened grass or stake holes. Tara asked why we were waiting for Gabe. He stood directly beside her. "What are you talking about?" I said. She looked at him and flinched, as if noticing a stranger in her bedroom. Chris remembered Gabe only after reading his arm. Mina began crying because she could picture Gabe's wedding, but could not remember the bride's name or whether she had attended. We tied ourselves together with a length of climbing webbing. Me, Gabe, Tara, Mina, Chris. It was awkward on the trail, but none of us wanted anyone to vanish between one step and the next. Owen waited for us above the lake. He stood beside a narrow snow crossing where the trail cut across a steep gully. We could go back, but he had somehow placed himself between us and the route to the trailhead. Going forward meant crossing snow above rocks and meltwater. 5 is a safer number, he said. Gabe asked what he wanted. Owen looked genuinely puzzled. To finish the hike. He pointed across the gully. The snow bridge was only 20 feet long. Footprints crossed it safely. 6 sets of prints. None came back. Owen stepped onto the snow and walked across. It did not sag beneath him. Chris followed before I could stop him. Then Mina. Tara moved next, pulling the webbing tight. The snow held. Gabe whispered, "If they forget me on the other side, don't let go." We crossed together. Halfway over, Owen began telling another story. He spoke about our graduation dinner. In his version, the reservation was for 5. Gabe had never enrolled in the program. Gabe had never met us. Gabe was a lonely man we found on the trail who had convinced me he belonged. The memory entered my head complete. I saw a restaurant table with 5 chairs. I saw Owen in a dark jacket, lifting a glass. I saw Gabe outside the window watching us. My hand loosened on the webbing. Gabe said my name. For 1 second, I did not recognize him. Then I saw the ink on my arm. Gabriel Torres. I repeated it aloud. He repeated my name. Tara read every name on her skin. Then Mina. Then Chris. We stood on the snow bridge shouting one another's names while Owen kept talking faster. The false memories collided with real ones. I remembered Owen at the graduation dinner and remembered an empty space where he now stood. I remembered Gabe ruining his phone and Owen holding the broken pieces. I remembered 6 people, 5 people, 4. "Stop saying them," Owen shouted. It was the first time he sounded afraid. We said the names louder. The snow beneath Owen cracked. He dropped to his knees. For the first time, his weight left an impression. A dark line shot across the bridge between his hands. He reached for Tara. Gabe pulled the webbing. All 5 of us fell toward the far bank as the center of the snow bridge collapsed. Owen went into the gully without a sound. We landed in a pile on solid ground. The webbing cut my waist and Chris dislocated 2 fingers, but no one went over the edge. Below us, chunks of snow tumbled through meltwater and vanished between rocks. There was no sign of Owen. We returned to the campsite instead of crossing the pass. A ranger patrol reached us that afternoon after another hiker reported the collapse. We gave 5 statements that sounded insane even to us. The ranger station had no record of an Owen Beck. The original digital permit listed only our 5 names. The Ohio address belonged to an empty lot. Searchers checked the gully for 2 days. They found no body, no gray backpack, and no blue cap. More disturbing, they found only 5 sets of tracks approaching the broken snow bridge. None of the prints matched the smooth-soled boots Owen had worn. The photographs were worse. Our trailhead picture showed 6 people. Owen stood in the center with an arm around Tara. In pictures from lunch, camp, and the lake, he moved closer to the camera while Gabe moved farther away. The final photograph, taken automatically at dawn, showed 5 of us beside the tents. Gabe was not in it. None of us remembers setting the timer. We stayed friends after that, but the memories never healed cleanly. Sometimes Tara calls Gabe by Owen's name. Chris insists there were 6 chairs at graduation. Mina has a framed wedding photo in which a man wearing a blue cap stands behind the last row of guests. Gabe refuses to look at it. I keep the permit and write our 5 names on the back every few weeks. It sounds obsessive, but I have caught the list changing twice. Last month, I woke in the middle of the night with fresh blue ink covering my left arm. Nolan, Tara, Mina, Chris, Owen. I scrubbed the last name until my skin bled. In the morning, Gabe called me. I stared at his name on the screen for almost a minute before I remembered who he was. Story 7. The baby monitor was hanging from a tree 6 miles from our rental cabin. A strip of masking tape on the back said Cabin 6. That was our cabin. This happened during a long weekend in Red River Gorge, Kentucky. I was 26 and had driven down from Cincinnati with 3 friends, Darius, Leah, and Ben. We rented a small place outside Slade and planned to spend 2 days hiking before everybody's work schedules pulled us apart again. The cabin was basic but clean. 1 bedroom, a loft, a hot plate, and a porch facing dense woods. The owner, Lionel, met us at the gravel drive. He was a talkative man in his late 50s who wore suspenders over a flannel shirt and called everyone neighbor. He gave us one warning that seemed odd. If you hear a baby crying outside at night, "It's bobcats," he said. "They make a sound that fools people." None of us knew whether that was true. We laughed, and Lionel laughed with us, but he repeated the warning before he left. The next morning, we drove to a trailhead and started a 10-mile loop past several arches and cliff lines. Rain was forecast for evening, but the sky was clear. We had maps, headlamps, food, and enough time to finish before the storm. Around noon, we stopped on a flat ridge for lunch. Darius walked behind a tree to find a private spot and returned holding a small white receiver. It was an old analog baby monitor, yellowed around the buttons. Green tape covered the battery door. The masking tape label on the back was written in thick black marker. "Cabin 6. Leah turned the volume knob. Static hissed from the speaker. Then we heard a wooden door open. Every one of us recognized the squeal of the cabin's front hinge. Footsteps crossed the floor. A drawer slid open. Silverware rattled. Someone breathed close to the transmitter. Ben said it could be another Cabin 6 using the same model monitor. That was possible. Rental properties' repeat numbers and analog frequencies overlap. Then the speaker picked up 3 notes from a wind chime. The porch at our cabin had a broken blue glass chime that made those exact notes whenever the breeze moved. Someone was inside our rental. We called the owner and the sheriff. No service. Darius had a satellite messenger in his pack, but it only supported short texts. We sent an emergency message saying a possible intruder was at our cabin and included the address. While the message queued, the person on the monitor walked into the bedroom. A zipper opened. "That's my duffel," Leah whispered. The intruder removed items one at a time. We heard pill bottles, keys, and the hard plastic case containing Ben's work laptop. Then paper unfolded. A man's voice read aloud. "Camille Foster, Darius King, Leah Morgan, Benjamin Shaw, our full names." Lionel had asked for them on the rental form. The monitor clicked off. We abandoned the loop and took the shortest marked route toward the road. The cabin was at least a 20-minute drive from the trailhead, but Darius found an old forest road on the map that cut west. If it remained passable on foot, it would bring us within a mile of the rental. We moved fast. The old road was overgrown but clear enough to follow. Every few minutes, Leah tried the monitor. At first there was only static. Then my own voice came from the speaker. The old road should save us an hour. I had said those words 10 minutes earlier. We stopped. The recording continued. Darius asked whether we should wait for a reply on the satellite device. Ben said no. A blue jay screamed in the background at the same point it had screamed while we spoke. Someone had recorded us on the trail. The playback ended with a sound we had not heard the first time. A baby crying. It came from close behind our voices. We searched our packs and clothing for a microphone. We found nothing. Darius checked the baby monitor casing and discovered a fresh strip of adhesive inside the battery compartment, as if a tracker had been removed. The sky darkened early. Thunder moved in from the southwest, and wind stirred the treetops. We continued along the forest road until we reached a fork not shown on the map. Orange tape marked the left branch. Green tape marked the right. The monitor came alive. Lionel's voice said, "Green gets you home, neighbors." Ben dropped the receiver. It landed in the leaves and kept speaking. "Rain's coming. Green gets you home." Darius picked it up with the tip of his trekking pole. He pressed the talk button. "Where are you?" Static answered. Then a baby began crying on the left-hand road. Not through the monitor. In the woods. The sound was faint but unmistakable. A distressed infant crying in bursts, stopping to breathe, then starting again. Leah took one step toward it. I grabbed her pack. Lionel's warning from the cabin returned to me. "If you hear a baby crying, it's bobcats." He had introduced the sound before we ever heard it, making sure we would question ourselves. "He wants us off the green road," I said. "Or he wants us on it," Darius replied. We chose neither. Using the compass, we cut directly west through the trees. The terrain dropped sharply. We slid down wet leaves, crossed a shallow stream, and climbed toward a sandstone cliff. Rain began as a light tapping on the canopy. The baby monitor started playing our conversation again. This time it was only seconds behind. "Keep west," my recorded voice said immediately after I said it. "He can hear us now," Ben whispered. The monitor repeated, "He can hear us now." We removed the batteries. It continued speaking. "Don't turn it off." Leah screamed and threw it against a tree. The casing cracked. Inside, beneath the empty battery compartment, a small blue light kept blinking. There was modern equipment hidden inside the old shell. The cliff forced us south. Rainwater ran down the rock in silver sheets. We found a shallow opening and stepped under it to check the map. The opening was not natural. A steel cable ran along the ceiling. Fresh boot prints led into darkness. 20 feet back, a green utility light glowed behind a bend. We should have stayed outside, but lightning struck close enough to shake the ground, and the rain became a solid curtain. The old forest road was turning into a stream. We went into the cave for shelter, and because the cable finally gave us something physical to follow. The passage opened into a dry chamber filled with electronics. Shelves held dozens of baby monitors, each labeled with a cabin number. Small radio receivers blinked beside laptops and charging stations. A wall map showed rental properties, trailheads, and colored routes between them. Red pins marked places where the forest roads crossed cliffs or caves. Cabin 6 had a photograph clipped beneath it. It showed the four of us unloading our car the previous afternoon. Another image showed Leah asleep in the bedroom, photographed from above. One laptop was still open to a page of scrolling comments. Hundreds of strangers had been watching us since breakfast. Some voted for the green road. Others wanted Lionel to play the crying baby again. Usernames offered money if he could make one of us abandon the group. The highest bid, highlighted in red, asked him to lock us in the cave until the storm arrived. A small video window showed us standing in that chamber from a camera above the doorway. When I stepped closer, new comments appeared. She found the control room. "Don't let cabin 6 leave." Then the stream ended, and a notice said the host had disconnected. We searched the ceiling and found a pinhole camera inside the smoke detector. Darius used the satellite messenger to update our emergency text with our coordinates. This time the message sent. Behind us, a metal gate slammed across the cave entrance. Lionel stood on the other side in a yellow rain jacket. He held a portable radio in one hand and a ring of keys in the other. "You weren't supposed to come in here," he said. Ben demanded that he open the gate. Lionel looked past us at the equipment. "I needed you on green. It loops to the county road. You would have found your cabin tossed, blamed some drifter, and gone home." "Why record us?" Leah asked. He smiled weakly. "People pay for fear when it's real." He had been broadcasting private recordings to an online audience. Guests heard unexplained noises, found objects from their cabins on trails, or received voices through hidden speakers. Lionel watched from cameras and sold access to viewers who voted on what should happen next. "Nobody gets hurt," he said. "Not unless they leave the route." Thunder rolled overhead. Water entered the cave around his boots. The chamber floor sloped toward us. Within minutes, a shallow stream moved through the passage, carrying leaves and mud. Lionel tried a key in the lock, then another. The gate did not open. He swore and pulled at it. "What did you do?" Darius asked. "Nothing." Rock shifted. The cave was flooding. Lionel ran outside, promising to reach a second entrance. We never saw him again. Water rose to our ankles, then our knees. The equipment sparked and went dark. The baby monitors on the shelves began activating one after another, though several were not connected to power. Dozens of infants cried in the black chamber. We searched the walls by headlamp. The map showed a ventilation route behind the equipment rack. Darius and Ben shoved the shelf over, exposing a narrow vertical crack with cold air moving through it. Leah was severely claustrophobic. The opening was barely wider than her shoulders, and the water had reached our waists. She kept saying she could not do it. Then a monitor labeled Cabin 11 spoke in a woman's voice. "The crack opens after 12 feet. Put your left arm over your head." Another voice added, "There's a ledge above the second bend." These did not sound like Lionel's recordings. They sounded like people giving directions from memory. We had no other choice. Darius went first. He called back that the crack widened. Ben followed, then Leah. I stayed last, holding her boots and talking until she cleared the tightest section. As I entered, the monitors behind me stopped crying. One child's voice said, "Cabin 6 is leaving." The crack climbed to a hidden opening in the woods above the cliff. We emerged into rain, scraped and bleeding but alive. Sheriff's deputies reached us 40 minutes later by following the satellite coordinates. The cave chamber flooded to the ceiling. Much of Lionel's equipment was destroyed, but investigators recovered drives containing years of recordings. Lionel's body was found 2 days later in a drainage channel. The official cause of death was drowning. Authorities identified several people whose voices had guided us through the crack. They were former guests who had escaped similar traps and later posted warnings online. Lionel had copied those warnings into his archive, probably to study what mistakes he made. One voice was never identified. The child who said Cabin 6 was leaving appeared on recordings dated 12 years apart. The voice never aged. Months later, police returned the cracked baby monitor to me because it was considered our property. Lionel's records showed he had assigned it to us before we arrived. I removed the hidden transmitter and kept the empty case in a box. Last week, I heard static from the closet. The monitor had no batteries and no electronics inside it. My own voice came through the speaker, older and frightened. "Camille, when the baby cries, do not take the stairs. I live in a third-floor apartment." An hour later, a baby began crying in the stairwell. Story 8. We found the girl's footprints coming out of the Pacific Ocean. There were none going in. The prints began where waves flattened the sand and crossed the beach in a straight line. Small bare feet. A child's. Each one filled slowly with clear water, even though the surrounding sand looked dry. My daughter, Elise, followed them to a pile of driftwood. That was where they stopped. A pink raincoat hung from a bleached branch, dripping onto the sand. This happened on the Olympic coast in Washington, along the Ozette Triangle. I was 51, and Elise was 16. Her mother had died the previous year after a long illness, and the two of us were still learning how to be a family without her. Hiking had always been our shared language. When talking became too difficult, we walked. The plan was to hike from Lake Ozette to Cape Alava, camp one night, then follow the beach south and return by the Sandpoint Trail. It was a popular route, but the coast could still feel isolated when fog moved in. We carried a tide chart, topographic map, and enough gear to wait out a high tide if necessary. The first day was quiet. We crossed boardwalks through cedar forest, reached the ocean in the afternoon, and hiked south while the tide was low. Sea stacks rose through fog. Gulls cried from black rocks. Every surface smelled of salt and wet wood. We saw the footprints near a headland around 4 o'clock. Elise called for the child. I searched behind the driftwood and along the tree line. No one answered. The coat was an old style with wooden toggles and a torn hood. It was too small for Elise and too clean to have washed in from the ocean. Inside one pocket was a flat white shell. Someone had written Ray on it in pencil. Ray was what my family called me when I was young. I had used Raymond since college. Elise had never heard the nickname. I closed my hand around the shell and told her we should leave the coat where it was. I said a family might be nearby. She asked why I looked frightened. I lied and blamed the weather. There was a reason I did not tell her the truth. When I was 8 years old, my 5-year-old sister disappeared on a beach in Oregon. Her name was Mara. She wore a pink raincoat. My parents told everyone a sneaker wave had taken her. That was the official story, and most of it was true. What I never told police, what I had never told anyone, was that Mara and I had gone into a sea cave after our father warned us not to. The tide rose faster than we expected. I climbed through a crack in the back and left her there while I ran for help. By the time adults reached the cave, it was full of water. Mara's body was never recovered. For years I convinced myself that I had done the only thing possible. I was a child. Staying would have killed both of us. But my last memory of her was not a wave. It was Mara standing in darkness, crying and asking me not to leave. The coat on the Olympic beach had the same missing toggle near the left pocket. I took Elise's hand and walked south. The footprints ended, but signs of the girl continued. A small handprint appeared on a wet boulder above our heads. We found a braid of yellow beach grass tied around a trail marker. Once, through fog, I saw a child walking at the edge of the surf. She vanished when a wave passed in front of her. Elise saw her too. "There's someone out there." I called, "Mara," before I could stop myself. The child turned. Even at a distance, I knew the tilt of that head. Mara always leans slightly left when listening, a habit from repeated ear infections. Then fog swallowed her. Elise demanded an explanation. I told her the story while we walked. Saying it aloud made the beach feel unreal. I expected her to dismiss it or accuse me of inventing details because of grief. Instead she asked, "Did Grandma know you left her?" "No." "Did Mom?" "No." That answer hurt her. I could see it. We reached our permitted campsite before dark. It stood above the beach in a line of twisted spruce. 2 other sites nearby were empty. I checked the tide chart again. High tide would peak shortly after midnight, well below the bank. We cooked without speaking. Wind pushed fog between the trees. At 8:30, something knocked beneath the driftwood piled on the beach. Before the knocking started, Elise found a line of tiny wet footprints around our tent. They circled it once, passed between us at the cooking area, and ended beside my pack. The zipper on the pocket holding the shell was open. I had closed it myself. Inside, everything was damp except the shell, which felt dry and warm. Elise wanted to throw it into the ocean. I said no because some childish part of me believed it was evidence, the one object that proved Mara had reached across all those years. Keeping it was another mistake I understood only later. 3 slow knocks. A pause. 3 more. Elise turned on her headlamp. A girl stood at the edge of the trees. She looked 5 years old. Her dark hair was plastered across her face, and a pink raincoat hung from her shoulders. Water streamed from the sleeves, but the ground around her shoes remained dry. "Ray," she said. Her voice had not aged in 43 years. I could not move. Mara looked past me at Elise. "He leaves people," Elise whispered. "Dad?" I stepped in front of her. Mara was gone. The ocean boomed against the beach. Water had already reached the lower driftwood, hours before the tide chart predicted. Waves rolled higher with each set, throwing logs against one another. The knocking had been wood striking wood, or that is what I wanted to believe. We packed immediately. Staying on the beach was dangerous. The map showed an overland rope route around the next headland, leading to higher ground. We moved south through darkness, keeping to the forest edge. The white shell remained in my pocket. It seemed to grow colder with every step. At the headland, the rope ladder was gone. Only 2 rusted bolts remained in the rock. A blue rope lay coiled on the sand below them, freshly cut. The tide pressed us against the cliff. We could retreat north to the campsite, but waves were already reaching the bank. The only other option was a sea cave at the base of the headland. According to the map, it opened onto a narrow cove on the far side at very low tide. At rising tide, entering it would be suicidal. From inside the cave, Mara called my name. Elise walked toward the opening. I caught her arm. She pulled away with surprising force. "There's a light," she said. "I can see the other side." I saw only darkness and white water. Mara appeared just inside the cave. She held out one hand to Elise. "He'll leave you too." Elise took another step. The shell in my pocket cracked. For an instant, the cave changed. I was 8 again, watching Mara beneath the Oregon headland. Then the child beside her became Elise, 16 years old, and wearing her mother's blue jacket. Both girls stared at me with the same accusation. I understood what Mara wanted. Not Elise. She wanted me to make the same choice again. I pulled the shell from my pocket and threw it into the cave. "I left you," I shouted. "I was scared and I left you. But I am not leaving her." Mara's face changed. The little girl expression vanished. Her skin looked pale and swollen. Seaweed hung from her mouth. Behind her, the cave filled with the shapes of people standing shoulder to shoulder in the water. Every one wore clothes from a different decade. Elise screamed. A wave struck us from behind. It lifted both of us and slammed me against the cliff. I held Elise's wrist as the water pulled at our legs. When it retreated, we were on our knees among rolling stones. Another wave was coming. Above us, the two rusted rope bolts were about 9 feet high. The rock between them was rough but climbable. I cupped my hands, boosted Elise to a ledge, and told her to climb. The second wave hit before she reached the bolts. Water covered my head. A log struck my hip. My grip tore away from the rock, and I felt myself sliding toward the cave. A small hand closed around mine. For one irrational second, I thought Mara had saved me. It was Elise. She had wrapped the cut blue rope around one bolt and lowered an end. I caught it, and she pulled while I climbed. Below us, Mara stood in the retreating water. "Ray," she said, "you promised to come back." I had promised. That was the part of the memory I had buried deepest. I climbed anyway. We reached the top of the headland and spent the night beneath an emergency tarp tied between trees. The tide rose across the entire beach. Logs the size of telephone poles moved in the surf below. Near dawn, we heard a child crying beneath the cliff. Neither of us went to look. We hiked out after daylight and reported the cut rope, the coat, and the dangerous tide. A ranger told us the official rope route had been replaced 2 years earlier with a path farther inland. The bolts we used were remnants of an old route removed in the 1990s. Our printed map was new. It had come from the ranger station that morning. Yet when we unfolded it, the overland path was shown exactly where the old bolts remained. The tide chart was wrong too. Every high and low time had been shifted forward by 3 hours. The ranger compared it to other charts from the same stack. Ours was the only one with different numbers. Searchers found no pink coat and no child's footprints. They searched the cave at the next low tide. On a shelf above the waterline, they found rusted belt buckles, plastic hair clips, pieces of watches, and coins dating from the 1960s to the present. The objects might have been ordinary debris carried by storms, except they were arranged in pairs. A ranger photographed everything, then left to request an evidence team. When he returned 30 minutes later, the shelf was bare. The cave had remained under observation from the beach, and no wave had reached high enough to touch it. They did find the white shell inside the sea cave after the tide fell. Ray was written on one side. On the other, in newer pencil, was Elise. We went home, and I finally told my mother the truth about Mara. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said something I had not expected. Mara was not wearing a pink coat the day she disappeared. I was. Our mother had bought matching coats, but Mara refused hers and wore a yellow sweater. In every dream and memory I had carried for 43 years, the colors were reversed. Elise developed the photographs from our trip. In one image, she stands beside the driftwood while I examine the coat. A second girl is visible behind her. The child wears a yellow sweater. She is holding the hand of someone in a pink raincoat. The person in the coat is my height now. His face is turned away, but one hand rests on Elise's shoulder. On his wrist is the watch my father gave me when I turned 18. Story 9. The emergency alert said the wildfire was moving east. The smoke was coming from every direction. My husband, Wes, held his phone above his head as if another 3 feet might give the message better sense. The screen showed a red warning banner and one instruction: proceed north 2 stone shelter. Do not turn back. My phone displayed the same alert. So did my nephew Mason's, even though his was in airplane mode. This happened in Great Smoky Mountains National Park during the first week of November. Mason was 15 and had been living with us since his mother, my younger sister, entered a long-term treatment program. He was angry at her, angry at us, and especially angry at any activity described as good for clearing your head. The overnight hike was Wes's idea. We chose a moderate route through the Tennessee side of the park, with one night at a backcountry campsite and an easy return along a creek. Cold weather had thinned the crowds. At the trailhead, only 2 other cars were parked beneath the bare trees. The day began gray and calm. We followed switchbacks through oak forest, crossed 2 footbridges, and stopped for lunch near an old stone chimney left from a homestead. Mason barely spoke. When he did, it was to ask how much farther. Around 3, the wind changed. Smoke drifted through the trees in thin blue layers. It smelled like a wood stove at first, then became sharp enough to sting my eyes. We checked the park's fire information page, but none of us had service. Our satellite communicator showed no active alert in the downloaded forecast. Then all 3 phones vibrated. The red warning appeared. Wes believed it. The message used the park logo, named our trail, and gave a direction. I was less certain. Emergency alerts should not have reached Mason's phone in airplane mode. Also, the trail north did not lead to a stone shelter, according to our map. While we argued, someone coughed in the woods. A boy stepped onto the trail. He looked about 17. Soot covered his face and hands. He wore brown wool pants, heavy boots, and a green jacket with a round patch sewn on the chest. The clothing looked old, like something from a museum display. He carried a shovel with a short, burned handle. "Shelter's this way," he said. Wes asked if he was with a trail crew. The boy glanced at the smoke. Not anymore. His name was Cal. That was all he offered. He said the lower bridge had burned, and the fire was making a run uphill. The stone shelter north was the only cleared ground close enough to reach. "How many in your party?" he asked. 3, I said. Cal counted us with his finger. 4. We turned. No one stood behind Mason. The trail vanished into smoke 20 yards back. Cal counted again. This time his fingers stopped after 3. "Keep close," he said. "Fire takes whoever walks last." I did not like him, the message, or the direction, but the smoke was thickening. Tiny pieces of ash landed on my sleeves. Somewhere downslope, a tree cracked and fell with a sound like a rifle shot. We followed Cal north. He moved quickly without seeming to breathe hard. The trail he used was not marked on our map, but old cuts in the hillside showed that it had once carried foot traffic. Wes kept behind Cal. Mason walked between us. I stayed last. Every few minutes, Cal looked back and counted. Once he counted 5. Once he counted only 2. Each time, the smoke shifted and the number returned to 4. "Why do you keep saying 4? Mason asked. Cal pointed behind me. At the edge of visibility, a person walked in the smoke. The figure was tall and black, not because of clothing but because it looked completely burned. Its arms hung too low. When I stopped, it stopped. When I raised one hand, it raised one hand. I hurried forward. The figure hurried too. "Don't let it choose the pace," Cal said. I moved ahead of Mason and made Wes take the rear. The black figure disappeared. 5 minutes later, Wes whispered my name. It was behind him now. We rotated positions, keeping Mason in the middle. No matter who walked last, the figure appeared behind that person. Sometimes it looked like me, sometimes like Wes. When it followed Mason, it was smaller and wore the outline of his hooded sweatshirt. The fire itself remained strangely invisible. We saw smoke, drifting sparks, and orange light pulsing between distant trees, but no wall of flame. The forest floor around us was damp from rain the previous night. Leaves should not have burned easily. I took out the satellite communicator and pressed SOS. Cal slapped it from my hand. "No time." Wes shoved him against a tree. "Touch her again, and you're on your own." Cal did not resist. He stared over Wes's shoulder. "Then who walks last?" The black figure stood 10 feet away. Its face was Wes's face, charred and split at the mouth. We ran. Cal led us down a slope to the stone shelter. It was not a building, only 3 low walls and a chimney in a clearing. Burned tools lay in the weeds. The date 1936 had been carved into a foundation stone. Smoke rolled over the clearing from all sides. Cal told us to get inside the walls. We crouched beside the chimney while he scraped leaves from a circle around us with his shovel. The black figure waited at the edge of the trees. It did not enter the clearing. For a few minutes, I believed we were safe. Then the old chimney began breathing. Air pulled inward through cracks in the stone. A low moan rose from the flue. Ash spilled from the fireplace opening, though no fire burned inside. Shapes moved in the ash. Handprints appeared one after another on the inner walls, small and large, as if people trapped inside the chimney were pressing outward. Cal backed away. "Wrong shelter," he whispered. That was the first time he sounded like a frightened boy. The black figure stepped into the clearing. The phone in my pocket vibrated again. New instruction. One person must remain at shelter. Others proceed to creek. Wes's phone displayed the same words. Mason's added a second line. "Leave the boy. He is not yours." Mason read it before I could take the phone. He looked at me with an expression I had seen too often since my sister left, anger covering fear. "Maybe it's right," he said. I grabbed his shoulders. "You are mine as long as you need to be." The message changed. Then it said, "Prove it." Flames appeared in the trees. They did not spread from one place. Every trunk around the clearing ignited at the same instant, thin orange lines climbing the bark. Heat pushed us toward the stone walls. Cal pointed downhill. "Creek bridge. Run together." We ran. The trail dropped steeply. Smoke reduced the world to Cal's green jacket and the back of Mason's head. I held Mason's pack strap. Wes held mine. Behind us, a fourth set of footsteps kept perfect rhythm. The creek appeared through the smoke, swollen from recent rain. An old suspension bridge crossed it, two cables supporting narrow wooden slats. Several boards were missing. On the far side, the forest looked clear. Cal stepped onto the bridge and turned. "One at a time," he said. "You said together," Wes shouted. "It won't hold four." The black figure came down the trail. It had Mason's shape now. Cal crossed first, light and fast. Wes went next. The bridge swayed but held. I made Mason go before me. Halfway across, he stopped. The black figure stood at the near anchor. Another Mason stood in front of me on the bridge. Both wore the same gray sweatshirt. Both had the white scar through the left eyebrow from a bicycle accident. Both looked terrified. Wes shouted for me to move. Cal held the cable on the far bank. "Cut the near rope," he called. "Leave the last one." I looked from the boy on the bridge to the boy at the anchor. I could not remember which one I had touched. The figure had matched his shape perfectly. It had matched his fear. The phone message had planted the idea that one of them did not belong. I stepped onto the bridge and held out both hands. "Both of you come." Cal screamed. "There's only room for one." The second Mason stepped onto the boards. The bridge dropped under our combined weight. A plank cracked. Wes moved toward us, but I shouted for him to stay on solid ground. Both boys reached me. I grabbed a wrist in each hand. The one on my left felt warm and alive. The one on my right felt hot enough to burn. I did not let go. "You don't choose for me," I said. The burned Mason opened his mouth. Smoke poured out. The bridge cable screamed. Boards fell into the creek. We moved forward as a group, was pulling my pack strap from the far bank. The burned figure became heavier with every step, dragging my right shoulder down. At the final board, Cal swung his shovel. The blade passed through the figure's arm and struck the cable. The burned Mason broke apart into ash. The bridge snapped behind us. All four of us, Wes, Mason, Cal, and I, fell onto the far bank. Rain began. Not gradually. 1 second there was smoke, and the next freezing water hammered the leaves. The flames on the trunks vanished. Within a minute, the forest looked dark and wet. Cal was gone. His shovel remained in the mud. The round patch on his jacket lay beside it, green cloth stitched with the words Civilian Conservation Corps. Our SOS had transmitted when Cal knocked the communicator away. Rangers found us 2 hours later beside the washed-out remains of a modern footbridge. They treated minor burns on my right palm and smoke irritation in all three of us. There had been no wildfire. A prescribed burn 40 miles away had produced a faint haze, but no fire entered our drainage. Rangers found no stone shelter where we described it. They did find the 1936 foundation, half a mile east of our recorded route. Around that foundation, 23 trees showed fresh heat damage. Each trunk was blackened in a narrow vertical strip about the width of a person, while dry leaves at the base remained untouched. A fire investigator said the pattern could not have come from a normal ground fire. The strips formed a circle facing the chimney, as if a crowd of burned people had stood among the living trees. One strip ended at the exact height of a 15-year-old boy. In every photograph of the circle, the camera registered one more blackened tree than investigators counted in person. The extra trunk always stood directly behind Mason in every single frame. At the visitor center, an archivist identified the name behind the patch number. Calvin Hutchins, age 17, had died during a 1936 forest fire after returning across a creek for a missing child. 3 other crew members survived. Reports disagreed about whether the child was ever found. We gave the patch to the park. Mason lives with us permanently now. His mother is doing better, and they are rebuilding their relationship. We have not gone backpacking since. The burns on my palm healed into 4 long scars shaped like fingers. Sometimes, when Mason walks ahead of me, the scars become warm. Last November, exactly 1 year after the hike, all 3 of our phones displayed the same red alert at midnight. No text, no park logo, only a live counter. It started at 4. Then Mason came downstairs, and it changed to 5. Story 10. The first lantern moved beneath 3 feet of lake ice. It was not a reflection. The sky was overcast, neither of us carried a lantern, and the orange light passed directly under my boots before continuing north. Maren saw it too. We stood in the middle of a frozen lake in northern Minnesota, watching that warm glow grow smaller beneath us. "Someone's diving," she said. It was the only explanation either of us could produce, and it made no sense. This happened in the Boundary Waters in February, during a 4-day winter trip west of Ely. Maren and I had known each other since college, and had done enough cold weather camping to understand the risks. We checked ice reports, carried throw ropes and ice picks, wore flotation bibs on crossings, and pulled our gear on 2 plastic sleds. Our route crossed a chain of lakes connected by wooded portages. Temperatures had remained below 0 for most of the month. An outfitter told us the main ice measured over 30 inches. We started shortly after sunrise. Snow squeaked beneath our snowshoes. The cold turned every breath into a cloud. By late morning, we were 2 lakes from the nearest road and had not seen another person. The lantern appeared on Birch Lake. At first, I thought it was sunlight passing through a crack. Then it moved against our direction, steady and deliberate. The ice beneath us was clear in places, dark water visible through trapped bubbles. The orange light traveled maybe 10 feet down, though distances were difficult to judge. Maren knelt and cleared snow with one glove. The glow stopped beneath her. Something struck the underside of the ice. One hard knock. Maren jumped back. The light continued north. We walked south. For the rest of that crossing, faint knocks followed us. They were spaced too evenly to be normal ice sounds. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 more. When we reached the portage, they stopped. On land, the incident became easier to explain away. Clear ice can bend light. Pressure cracks carry sound across long distances. Someone with a headlamp could have been moving near the far shore, distorted beneath the surface. We repeated those explanations until they sounded almost convincing. Our first campsite was on a small island in Agnes Lake. We pitched the tent behind spruce trees, built no fire, and ate while darkness settled across the frozen water. The temperature dropped to 12 below. At 9, an orange light appeared offshore. It moved beneath the ice toward the island. Then a second light appeared behind it. Maren and I watched through the tent door. The glows stopped 20 yards from shore. They remained there for nearly an hour, bright enough to illuminate cracks below the surface. At 10:15, the knocking began under our tent. The island was solid granite and soil. We were 40 feet from the lake. 3 knocks came from beneath my sleeping pad. 3 answered below Maren. We put on boots, grabbed our safety gear, and left the tent. The sound stopped as soon as we reached the trees. In the morning, frost covered the tent floor. Handprints marked it from underneath. There were at least 6, each long-fingered and gray where warmth should have melted the frost. We packed without breakfast. The fastest route out required retracing our path. The alternative was a longer chain leading east to a maintained snowmobile corridor. We chose the longer route because neither of us wanted to cross Birch Lake again. Near noon, we reached an ice fishing shelter in the center of an unnamed lake. It was a small plywood shack painted red. No snowmobile tracks led to it. Snow had drifted cleanly against all four walls. Smoke came from the stovepipe. We called hello. No one answered. The door was unlocked. Inside, a propane heater glowed blue. 2 folding chairs faced a round fishing hole. A pot of coffee sat warm on a metal shelf. The fishing hole had frozen over with clear ice. On the walls, people had carved names and dates. Some dates went back 50 years. The newest entry had been cut into the wood so recently that pale splinters lay on the floor. Derek Larkin, Maren Holt, February 11th. That day, below our names were 2 lines. 2 above, 6 below. A water-stained notebook rested beside the coffee pot. Most pages contained ordinary fishing notes, temperatures, bait, wind direction, but the final entries were lists of people. Each list ended with the same subtraction. 4 above became 3. 3 became 2. The oldest legible entry was dated 1974 and mentioned a guide named Walter who went down without breaking the lid. The newest line in wet blue ink read, "Maren will be 8. Derek will carry the light." I tore out the page and stuffed it into my jacket. When officials later inventoried my clothing, they found only a blank, soggy sheet. Maren backed toward the door. The heater went out. Through the clear fishing hole, an orange lantern rose from the darkness. This time a hand held it. The person beneath the ice wore a heavy coat that billowed slowly in the water. Long hair floated around a pale face. The eyes were open. One gloved hand raised the lantern. The other pressed against the frozen hole. Behind that person, more lights approached. We ran from the shelter. The snowmobile corridor should have been 3 miles east. We followed a compass bearing and stayed near shore where possible. Orange lights moved below us, 6 at first, then 7. They traveled in a line matching our pace. Whenever we stepped onto land for a portage, the lights vanished. The knocking continued beneath the snow. By 3, clouds lowered and light snow began falling. We reached the final lake before the corridor. It was the largest crossing of the route, almost 2 miles of open ice. 7 lanterns waited near the western shore. They arranged themselves in a curving line toward the opposite side, spaced like runway lights. Between them, the ice looked black and smooth. Maren checked the compass. The lights pointed southeast. Our exit was northeast. We ignored them and took the northeast bearing. The lights moved. They formed a new path in front of us, always turning slightly southeast. When we corrected north, the first light crossed beneath our snowshoes and appeared on the other side. The ice made a deep booming sound. We spread 30 feet apart and unfastened our sled harnesses. The surface was thick, but a pressure ridge ran across our route. Plates of ice had pushed upward into a jagged seam. Water seeped through narrow cracks. The lanterns gathered beneath the ridge. For the first time, I saw all the people carrying them. 6 men and women stood upright in the black water, as if the lake bottom were directly below the ice. Their clothing came from different times: wool coat, canvas parka, red snowmobile suit, modern down jacket. Their hair and loose fabric moved in a current I could not feel. The 7th figure carried no lantern. It wore my yellow shell. Its face was mine. Maren shouted for me to keep moving. The figure beneath me raised one hand. I raised mine without meaning to. It smiled. The pressure ridge split. Maren dropped through to her chest. 1 second she was standing, the next black water surrounded her. She caught the edge with both arms and screamed. I fell flat, kicked off my snowshoes, and crawled toward her with the throw rope. The ice cracked beneath my elbows. Her soaked clothing dragged her down. Orange light filled the water around her. Hands reached upward. Maren's body jerked once as something pulled from below. She lost her grip with one hand. I threw the rope past her, and she caught it around her wrist. I crawled backward, hauling while she kicked. Pale fingers closed around her ankle. I saw them clearly through the broken ice. The figure wearing my face stood directly beneath her. It held no lantern because both hands were wrapped around her boot. I took an ice chisel from the sled and struck through the opening. The blade passed through the figure's forearm without resistance, but its face twisted in pain. The other drowned people opened their mouths. All 7 lanterns went dark. Maren came free. I pulled her onto the ice and rolled both of us away from the crack. We abandoned one sled and reached shore in less than 5 minutes. I stripped off her wet outer layers, wrapped her in a vapor barrier and sleeping bag, then activated the SOS. The lanterns returned beneath the ice. 8 of them now. 1 remained beside the pressure crack. 7 moved toward shore. We dragged ourselves into the woods and climbed until the lake disappeared behind trees. Maren could walk, but she was confused and shivering violently. I built an emergency shelter in a low hollow and kept her insulated while we waited. After sunset, orange light appeared beneath the snow around us. The entire hollow glowed. Knocking rose through the frozen ground. 3 knocks below me, 3 below Maren. Then, from farther uphill, 2 more knocks answered. 8 below. A conservation officer and 2 wilderness responders reached us shortly before midnight. They approached from the ridge on snowmobiles. The orange light vanished when the engines came close. Maren spent 2 days in a hospital with hypothermia and severe bruising around her right ankle. Doctors said the marks looked like a handprint, but assumed they came from my rescue attempt. I had pulled her by the left arm. Officials inspected the pressure ridge. They found the hole, our sled, and the ice chisel. Sonar showed the lake was 80 feet deep at that location. There were no bodies beneath us. 1 responder wore a body camera while he examined the hole. I later saw part of that footage after filing a records request. The video showed clear water, the abandoned sled, and the responder lowering a weighted line. At the moment the line reached 80 feet, 8 orange lights appeared on the sonar display in a perfect circle. The technician blamed interference and restarted the unit. Before the screen went black, a 9th dot rose rapidly from the bottom and stopped directly beneath the responder's boots. The red fishing shelter did exist, but not where we found it. It belonged to a resort 12 miles south and had broken loose during a storm 11 years earlier. It sank before anyone could recover it. I asked about the carved names. The officer said there was no shelter to search. Maren stopped winter camping. I did too. For several months, neither of us could stand the sound of ice dropping into a drink. Then in August, Maren called me from her apartment in Duluth. She had found water beneath her bed. Not a leak. A perfect black circle in the hardwood, the size of the fishing hole. The floor inside the circle felt frozen. An orange light moved far below it. I drove there while she waited outside. By the time I arrived, the floor was dry and solid. Her landlord found no plumbing problem. Maren moved to Arizona 2 weeks later. For a while, the distance seemed to help. She sent photographs of red rock, dust, and dry creek beds. She stopped waking to knocks beneath the floor. Then winter brought a rare run of snow to the high country. In her last voicemail, she said she had seen an orange light moving under the frozen water in her kitchen sink. Last February, she disappeared during a hike outside Flagstaff. Searchers found her car, her day pack, and a line of snowshoe prints crossing a shallow frozen stock pond. The pond was less than 4 feet deep. Her tracks stopped in the center, where the ice was thick and unbroken. There were no prints leading back. That night, my old satellite communicator activated inside a drawer. It displayed a message from Maren's device, even though police had found it in her pack. The message contained no coordinates, only a new count. 1 above, 8 below.